They mocked him before they ever stepped inside. That was important, because once they did, the laughter ended. But in the beginning, all anyone in the valley could see was a giant steel cylinder sitting alone in the snow, like some misplaced piece of railroad equipment. No porch, no proper roof, no straight walls, just a rust-dark curved shell, 40 feet long, laid horizontal on timber skids at the far edge of the settlement where the north wind struck first. "It looks like a buried pipe," one man said. "A coffin for a giant," another replied. Then came the easiest joke of all. "Maybe he plans to roll away when winter starts." The laughter carried across the frosted field. Nathan Hale heard every word. He was standing in the open doorway of the cylinder, sleeves rolled, hammer in hand, fitting the frame of a wooden inner wall just beyond the entrance. He did not answer. He rarely did. Nathan had spent years around rail yards and freight depots where steel was trusted for one thing above all others: strength. Steel carried loads. Steel crossed distances. Steel survived impacts that shattered wood. Yet in the valley, people only thought of houses one way: square, timber, pitched roof, chimney in the center. Anything else looked foolish before it was tested. Nathan knew appearances meant little in winter. Performance meant everything. He had bought the cylinder cheaply from a rail contractor 2 towns over. It had once been a storage tank, cleaned and cut free from its fittings. Most men saw scrap. Nathan saw structure already finished. A shell that could bear snow without sagging. A curve the wind could not strike cleanly. A shape with no corners to trap cold. But raw steel alone would have been miserable. He knew that better than anyone. Metal changed temperature too quickly. In open air it became whatever the weather demanded. Burning hot in summer, bitter cold in winter. So he never planned to live against steel. He planned to live inside it. That was why he worked in layers. First, he raised a timber floor several inches above the steel base on stout blocks, leaving an air gap beneath. Then he framed inner walls of pine slats following the curve, creating a second skin inside the cylinder. Between steel and what he packed dry straw, wool scraps, and sealed pockets of still air. Not everywhere at once. Carefully. Enough to stop direct contact. Enough to slow transfer. Enough to make the weather work harder. At the entrance, he built a recessed doorway with 2 doors instead of 1. An outer steel hatch and an inner timber door 3 feet behind it. A small chamber between them. An airlock, though no one there used such words. When the outer door opened, winter would meet only a narrow space, not the whole room. The valley laughed harder when they saw that. He built a hallway inside a tank. He'll need 3 coats just to reach the stove. Nathan kept working, because he had also placed the stove exactly where it mattered, slightly off-center, pipe rising through the top, where the curve naturally encouraged warm air to circulate down both sides. No cold corners. No dead rooms. No wasted space. By first frost, the inside looked nothing like steel. Wood-lined walls glowed amber in lamplight. Shelves followed the curve. Bed at one end. Table at the other. Storage tucked into every arc and recess. Compact. Orderly. Efficient. From outside, it still looked absurd. That helped him. People dismiss what they do not understand long enough for it to prove itself quietly. Winter arrived lightly at first. Thin ice on troughs. Morning smoke straight and calm. Nathan lit a modest fire in the cylinder and noticed what he had hoped for immediately. The room warmed fast. Small volume. Rounded shell. Insulated cavity walls. Then something better happened. It stayed warm longer than expected. Without corners or high and used ceiling space. Heat moved evenly through the cylinder instead of pooling above and abandoning the floor. He tested it nightly. 1 log less. Then another. Still comfortable. Meanwhile, the valley settled into routine. Bigger homes needed bigger fires. Long hallways stayed chilly. Back rooms went unused after dark. People accepted these things because they always had. Then the first hard wind came through the pass. It hit after sunset and stayed till morning, driving snow sideways across the flats. Cabins groaned. Roof edges whistled. Drafts appeared under doors fought tight. Nathan sat inside the cylinder listening. Or rather, not listening. The wind slid around the curved shell instead of slamming flat into it. No corners boomed. No eaves rattled. The sound was lower, smoother, distant. He placed another small split of wood on the fire and read by lantern. At dawn, drifts lay piled against the north side, but the cylinder itself wore snow evenly like a sleeping animal. That afternoon Caleb Turner came by. Young, broad-shouldered, usually quick with jokes. He stood outside long enough to smirk at the structure once more before Nathan opened the outer hatch. "You inviting me in?" Caleb asked. "We're loading cargo?" Nathan stepped aside. Caleb entered the small front chamber first, then through the inner door. He stopped immediately. The room was warm. Not blazing. Balanced. The kind of warmth that made shoulders lower without permission. He looked around slowly. Curved wooden walls. Dry air. Steady stove. No drafts. No frozen floorboards. "This," Caleb said, then stopped. Nathan waited. "This shouldn't be this comfortable." Nathan poured coffee into a tin cup. "Yet it is." Caleb accepted the cup and moved one gloved hand along the inner wall. "Feels like a cabin." "It is a cabin. It's a tank." "It was." Caleb laughed once to spite himself. Then he noticed something else. No cold zones. He walked to the far and near the bed. Still warm. Back to the table. Still warm. He looked up. "No corners," he said. "No corners," Nathan agreed. Caleb stayed an hour. When he left, the outside cold hit him like punishment. That evening, he mentioned only two things in town. It was warm, and it used less wood than his father's kitchen stove. The laughter did not stop, but it changed. Now it had doubt mixed in. Then the temperature dropped again. Lower than anyone expected for that early in the season. Pails froze solid. Window frost thickened by dusk. Families began shutting doors between rooms to concentrate heat. Nathan did none of that. He heated one space because one efficient space was all he had. And it worked. By the second week of true winter, smoke from his flue remained thin and steady while other chimneys roared. People noticed. They noticed he chopped less wood. They noticed he looked rested. They noticed lights still glowed in the cylinder late at night while the wind tore across open fields. Then, during the season's first blizzard, pounding struck his outer hatch after midnight. Nathan opened it to find Mrs. Tolland wrapped in blankets, grandson in arms, snow crusted white across both of them. "Our stove went out," she said through chattering teeth. "Pipe blocked with ice." Nathan pulled them into the front chamber and shut the hatch, then opened the inner door. Warmth spilled forward. The boy stopped crying almost at once. Mrs. Tolland stared past Nathan into the curved room beyond. All the jokes she had ever laughed seemed to leave her face at once. Behind her, through the storm-dark field, more figures were moving toward the cylinder. By the time Nathan barred the outer hatch again, 3 more people were already crossing the field through blowing snow. Lantern light swung wildly in the dark. Shapes bent against the wind. The blizzard had broken half the valley's confidence in a single night. Nathan moved quickly. Mrs. Tolland and her grandson were settled near the stove with blankets and hot water. Then he opened the hatch again and pulled in Caleb Turner, followed by his younger brother carrying a crate of dry wood. "Father sent this," Caleb said, breathless. "Said if I came asking help, I'd better not come empty-handed." Nathan nodded once. "Set it by the wall." Then came Harlan Pike and his wife, their chimney draft reversed by the storm. Then old Mr. Wexler, whose back room had gone nearly as cold as outdoors. Then 2 children from the lower cabins needing warmth before dawn. The cylinder filled, but not chaotically. That was another thing Nathan had planned without knowing he would need it. Everything had a place. The bed platform doubled as seating. Storage benches opened for blankets. The curved walls held shelves high and clear of movement. No wasted corners. No dead space. People sat where they could, and the room still functioned. Most were too cold to speak at first. They simply stared. At the walls. At the stove. At one another. Because outside was violence. Inside was control. The stove was not roaring. That troubled them most. In their minds, warmth required struggle. Huge fires. Constant feeding. Sparks. Smoke. Sweat. Yet Nathan's fire burned low and steady, and still the room held. "How?" Harlan finally asked, rubbing stiff hands together. Nathan pointed upward. Small space. Then to the walls. Layers. Then around the curve. And no place for heat to hide. They did not fully understand. But they felt it. And feeling is often enough. The storm lasted until midday. When it passed, the valley emerged to buried fences, blocked doors, and chimneys choked with drifted snow. Men dug paths first to barns, then to neighbors. But word had already outrun them. Half the valley knew by noon that a steel cylinder had sheltered more people than several larger homes. The laughter stopped completely after that. Winter deepened. The blizzard had only been the beginning. What followed were the long cold weeks that truly tested buildings. Clear nights below zero, hard winds from the pass, snow that reflected moonlight like iron. Cabins showed strain. Wood piles dropped faster than expected. Large rooms went unused. Families sealed off parlors and back bedrooms, living from one heated space to the next. Nathan's cylinder did not change. That was its greatest strength. No extra rooms to lose. No corridors to warm. No attic swallowing heat. One room. One purpose. One manageable fire. He cut wood every third day, while others cut daily. He slept through the night, while others rose twice to feed stoves. He noticed people watching him when he crossed town. Not mocking now. Measuring. Caleb came often, sometimes to help, sometimes simply to sit. One evening he ran a hand along the outer steel shell, then stepped inside and touched the warm inner wall. "Cold enough to burn your skin out here," he said. "Warm enough to nap in there." Nathan shrugged. Steel only decides fast. Layers decide slow. Caleb grinned. That sounds like something worth remembering. It was. Soon others began trying smaller versions of the same ideas. Mrs. Tollan hung wool quilts to divide her main room from the rest of the house. Harlan banked snow against his north wall to block wind. The Turners built a second inner door just inside their kitchen entrance. Mr. Wexler lowered his ceiling with canvas and beams in the room he used most. Not copies of the cylinder. Lessons from it. Control the space. Slow the loss. Heat less, better. Then came the deep freeze. The kind old men tied to years and told stories about decades later. Well thickened. Water buckets froze near stoves. Axes rang like bells in the brittle air. 2 families lost their fires overnight when green would smothered coals. They came to Nathan before sunrise. He opened the hatch without surprise. By then, no one apologized for needing the steel cylinder. Need had burned pride out of the valley. During those worst days, the cylinder became more than Nathan's home. It became a warming station. People rotated through in shifts. Children thawed there after chores. Older folk rested there before walking home again. EMB airs were carried out in covered tins to restart failing stoves. Nathan asked little in return. Dry wood when possible. Water if they had it. Sweep snow from the hatch. Respect the space. They did, because it had earned it. When spring finally began loosening the valley, roofs dripped for the first time in months. Paths widened. Faces softened. And across the settlement, changes had already started. New porches enclosed as entry chambers. Curtains dividing oversized rooms. Extra insulation packed between wall studs. Low ceilings built in winter rooms. Even one farmer dragging an old grain tank toward his land with suspicious determination. Nathan watched all this from beside the cylinder one late afternoon as meltwater ran beneath the skids. Caleb joined him. "They laughed at you hard," Caleb said. Nathan looked at the rusted curve glowing orange in sunset light. They laughed at what they saw. And now, Nathan glanced across the valley where smoke rose thinner and steadier from homes that had learned efficiency the hard way. Now they're looking at what works. Caleb smiled. "You ever going to build a real house?" Nathan rested a hand on the steel shell. "This is a real house." The next winter came early again, but it did not hit the same valley. Doors had chambers. Rooms had boundaries. Walls had added layers. Families burned less wood and worried less. And at the far edge of the settlement, where the north wind struck first, smoke still rose from the giant steel cylinder people once mocked. Only now, when travelers asked about it, no one called it foolish. They pointed to it with respect. Because in the worst season anyone could remember, when larger homes failed and pride froze first, the strangest shelter in the valley had done the simplest thing of all. It kept people warm.